Be sure to subscribe to the Healthcare Security Cast so you don't miss a single episode. We're on multiple platforms, including Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, and Audible, just about anywhere where you can listen to a podcast. For links to all of these sites, for links to join the Healthcare Security Cast community groups on LinkedIn and Facebook, or if you're interested in being a guest or being a sponsor, you can find all of this through one link. Check out our link tree at linktree/Brian Hamilton. That's linktr.ee/Brian, B-R-I-N-E, Hamilton. Again, that's linktr.ee/Brian Hamilton. And before we get into the show, I just want to thank our sponsors, 3D Network Technology. Reliability is our core value. Visit 3dnetworktechnology.com. And Genetech, delivering security strategies for healthcare. Visit Genetech, that's GENETEC.com. And also the Change Execution Group and 360 Life Transformations. Visit 360lifetransformations.com.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast, the podcast dedicated to healthcare security, safety, and emergency management. If you are involved with a healthcare security program or desire to be, this podcast is for you. Join the conversation as we discuss the issues that matter to healthcare security professionals while leveraging the expertise of healthcare security thought leaders and experts in personal development. And now, here's your host, Brian Hamilton.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast for February 9th. I'm joined today by Jeff Hauk. Jeff, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Brian. It's an honor to finally be with you, and I really love what you've been doing with the podcast and just privileged to be among your distinguished guests that you've had on and excited to chat with you today.
Absolutely. Likewise. Happy to chat with you as well. And I'm glad we were able to finally make the time. So really excited to chat with you today. Now, the thing I always like to start off with is give everybody a chance to know exactly who we're talking to today. So I'll start off by asking, who is Jeff Hauk?
Yeah, that's a kind of a loaded question. Not one that I get to answer very often, and being somewhat, I guess, humble in nature, I don't talk about myself too often. But on the personal side, I'm married to my wife, Julie, and who we will be celebrating 27 years of marriage this August. We have 3 sons, 24, 23, and 18. I was born and raised in Michigan, spent most of my early life there. I have also spent some time in Casper, Wyoming, and El Paso, Texas along the way. I attended Central Michigan University for both my undergrad and my first graduate degree. And then on the professional side, I'm one that kind of realized my destiny or true calling a little later than most. But I have been in the security industry for just over 21 years, the last 7 years in healthcare security here at Memorial Healthcare, where I am the Director of Public Safety and Police Authority Services.
And also correct me if I'm wrong here, but you were the 2020 Campus Safety Healthcare Security Director of the Year.
Actually, I was the Director of the Year in, I believe, 2017, runner-up in 2019.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I got the years wrong, but nonetheless, highly regarded in our industry and recognized as one of our leaders. Now, I just want to circle back to one thing because I also have an August anniversary. What day is yours?
August 6th.
August 6th. So mine's August 12th. So we're right around the same time. I've got some catching up to do, though. We're going to be at year 14 this year.
Okay, so you're on your way.
Awesome. So I guess the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is your career, because you touched on it there. You said you really found your calling a little bit later than most, which I think is fairly common. I can probably say the same thing as well. So what's led to you being where you are today, and specifically in healthcare security, over that 21-year security career? What were you involved with?
Yeah, so the way I got into the business, like I said, I attended Central Michigan University and got my BS in sport administration. I was an aspiring collegiate athletic director. That was kind of my goal and hopes. I had worked in campus recreation and the athletic department while I was at CMU, did a lot of coaching of youth sports, just really enjoyed the sport arena and had, up till that point, had really never given thought to any kind of security law enforcement whatsoever. In my younger years, I wasn't necessarily a bad kid, but I was certainly one that probably pushed the limits or led, was on that borderline other side. And maybe as I look back at it now, that's some of the things that have helped me in my career now. Graduated with my bachelor's degree, got married, started life out, and then started into a master's program before my wife became pregnant with our first child. So with finances tight and having to get a grown-up job, I started working full-time and just concentrated on that. Actually had a couple jobs. I spent pretty much 10 years in landscape management operations. And then I was also worked as a cost estimator for first an industrial ventilation company and then an electrical controls company until my grandfather's death in, I believe it was 1997. So just before he passed away, we were extremely close, the two of us. He was quite like a father figure to me. And as the last few moments we spent together, he had asked me, he could tell that I wasn't really extremely happy with where I was and what I was doing in life, and just wanted me to make him a promise that I would do my best to find something that I love so I could enjoy my life like he did. And so turning the page from that, also law enforcement was somewhat in our family background. I had uncles and cousins and so forth in the law enforcement realm. Started to gain a little interest in that. Started to applied for the Michigan State Police. Started throughout their vetting process and the selection process. And about halfway through, they initiated a hiring freeze that at that time I didn't know would last that long, but lasted nearly 10 years. So without that hope and still working full time and just trying to find my way, I came across an opportunity with a company called Bioport Corporation. They're now known as Emergent Biosolutions. And at that time, they had just taken over the facility and manufacturing of the anthrax vaccine from the state of Michigan. And so they were in the process. They weren't manufacturing any product, but they did have Department of Defense contracts. And I got my first role as a security officer with Bioport, who was looking to build a proprietary program as they took over the operations from the state. And as part of that, jumped head first into it. Shortly after my arrival there, within a year, 9/11 occurred, and that changed everything overnight. So we dramatically had to increase the level of security and training and focus and professionalism and everything. So I was very lucky to be on the ground floor of building that program that I, by 2004, took over as the manager of the program and continued to build and grow that program as the organization also continued to grow. And when I began there, it was just a one-site manufacturing facility that wasn't doing any manufacturing to a multi-site domestically and growing into an international footprint of sorts. And so by 2006, we were heavily involved in expanding and growing, and were designated by the Department of Homeland Security as one of 13 Tier 1 critical infrastructure sites in the United States. Was just thrown headfirst into all of this. We added, along with the protective operations and force protection, we added emergency management and executive protection and travel security to our responsibilities. Quickly grew, and for myself, I actually then branched out into also being responsible for risk management, environmental health, and safety. And by the time I left my full-time role at the end of 2009 with them, I was the Director of Risk Management and Global Protective Operations. I remained there until 2011 part-time as a consultant, primarily conducting security risk assessments for them across their organization and looking at the potential acquisitions they were looking into. And then spent some time still in critical infrastructure protection with the El Paso Water Utilities, so on the public side of things. And then also got a little bit of a taste of the K through 12 world in my time in Casper, Wyoming, And then all of a sudden at the end of 2013, beginning of 2014, I was contacted by Memorial Healthcare here in Owasso, Michigan, which is where I was born and raised, and wondering if I'd be interested in coming home and taking on a consulting role for 6 months to evaluate the organization and tell them how they could do a better job of, protecting their assets here at Memorial. And I came here in February of 2014 and have been here ever since.
Awesome. With all that, you've obviously gained experience with a lot of different areas of the security field. What was it that drew you to healthcare?
It was really lucky, right opportunity at the right time. At the time, this came up with Memorial. My father was in poor health and he still lived back here. So it was certainly an opportunity to come back initially to help him and do what I could there. My mother and stepfather still live here. We were getting to the point, my oldest two boys were looking at going to college. They ended up going to our alma mater, Central Michigan University. So it was just really, the timing was right, everything aligned up. And then the last thing that aligned up right was once I got here, I really enjoyed the approach that they were looking to take as far as putting together a brand new program. So like I said before, I came on as a temporary consultant, 6-month term. I submitted my first 90-day report and immediately thereafter was contacted by the CEO and president, and he said that he had read through my report and loved some of the recommendations and ideas and wanted me to come on full time, brought me on full time, and he's been very good to work with. Sometimes it's good to run into executives that know that they don't know everything and want to bring in somebody, particularly when it comes to safety and security. I think sometimes those things can be overlooked or not given the just due that they should be given. And that wasn't the case here. So really had that opportunity to come in and really was a clean slate, an open book where I could just build and create a program from scratch the way I wanted to and the way I thought it was needed and not rush it and go through the different phases that we've gone through and putting this all together. And then obviously the cherry on top was the fact that I was able to return to my hometown, which I can tell you, growing up and even until this option or challenge presented itself, I would have never dreamed in my life that I would be working in my hometown and particularly at Memorial Healthcare doing security.
Wow, no, that's an amazing journey. Now, I'm curious too, along your journey, was there anybody that you identified as a mentor, and how's mentorship impacted your career?
Yeah, so I look at maybe mentorship a little differently than some. Sometimes I think it's a term that we use maybe a little too much. So how I define that is I'm very much an introvert, and maybe because I'm an introvert too, building trust with people takes time. Obviously, I would consider my grandfather and my father, mentors to me. And really, other than them, I only really had two individuals that kind of really fell into that realm. And one was Clyde Smith, who was my boss at Bioport Emergent Biosolutions when I was young, starting out, really green, had a lot of passion, a lot of ambition, but needed that fine-tuned and some direction. And he was certainly one that really took me under his wing. And he came from law enforcement. He had retired after 25 years in law enforcement and came to Emergent to manage the program initially. And so I learned a tremendous amount under him. And the other person is Dr. Dean Broughton with the Natrona County School District, who was the Director of Support Services while I was there. So we were peers, and we shared a building together. When I was there, Student Support Services and at that time District Risk Management were co-located, and we had offices next to each other. And he's one that really helped me navigate the K through 12 realm, and again, probably polish off and fine tune those more hardened approaches that I had from more of that critical infrastructure approach, but learned a great deal from him, not just from in the K through 12, but just in general. He was an extremely smart guy, but he took me under his wing and keep in contact with both of those individuals to this day. And then, so beyond the mentorship, then I put into the next category influencers. And I'm only going to talk about the positive influencers. I know we have negative influencers too, and I've certainly had a lot of those. But in the positive influences that I've had because of my introvertedness, I tend to watch others and learn a lot from watching others. And so some of those early on influencers were Mike Tanner, who was Vice President of Business Development and Operations at Emergent, he was the one that gave me my first chance at a real manager leadership role and really took a chance on me. Again, I was young, still green, but very passionate about things. I think he saw that in me and gave me that opportunity that probably most wouldn't have given me, take on a role such as that and as big as that. And then along the way there at Emergent, also, I worked for a gentleman, his name's Adam Havey, who's an executive vice president now, but he was my boss at one point in time when I was there. And I learned a lot just watching and talking with him and more about the business side. He was a chemical engineer, so more about the intricacies of the business we were in, along with Sean Kirk. Sherry Gill was a huge influence on me. She was, at one time, I reported to the director of HR at Emergent, so she was that director. And then here at Memorial, there's been two key people that have really meant a lot. Ruth Ann Liegar, which was my boss when I originally started as a temporary staff member, and then when I took on my first permanent role. And then now my boss currently is Tom Kurtz, who's the Vice President and Chief Information Officer. Both of them, in their own regard, have learned a lot from watching them, particularly in the healthcare industry. And then healthcare security influencers, I think the first person from healthcare security that I learned about and started to watch was Bonnie Michaelman. Came across her and her path and through As Is, and then some others are Marilyn Hollier, at University of Michigan. She was still at U of M when I started here, and I know there was a few times that I reached out to her on things and watched and listened to her attending the IHSS conferences and some seminars, and Brian Warren and Lisa Terry and Tony York, all big influencers for me. Kareem Villani, I've worked with him quite a bit, particularly when I've been continually trying to build and grow. And when we talk about staffing, he's really helped me out a lot. And then two other pretty key influencers and professional peers that I really gauge myself against, kind of friendly competition in looking at who's doing what and who's doing what better. Or Eric Clay and Mark Reed, very much follow them in their journey as well.
Yeah, that's a great group of names. A lot of, especially when you get into the healthcare security influencers, so many people who have been mentioned before and are just emerge as leaders in our industry. So yeah, definitely some great names there. Now,
absolutely great names and they've had big impact.
Absolutely. Now, the one thing that you touched on that we'll spend a good amount of time on today is the actual process of building a healthcare security program from scratch. Now, when you undertook this role and took on the responsibility of building the security program, one thing you would have had to do was build relationships fairly quick within the organization. What was your approach to networking and building relationships with your internal stakeholders?
Yeah, you're exactly right. The network building is critical, both internal and external, and was for our program. I think my approach initially was, when I came in, the first thing I wanted to do was get to know who the other executives were, who were the members of the board, who were the departmental leaders, and work my way through those. So I made it a point to do a lot of the different things. I think some of it was when I came in, one of the people I mentioned before, Ruth Ann Liegar, and talking with her and telling her some of those things that I wanted to do and that I felt was important, she really helped pave the way and get me very quickly into some of the committees. And so I was able to develop those relationships right from the start. because particularly one of the things when you're building a program is the relationship building and establishing that networking and relationships to drum up support, but also to gain the trust of those other individuals, to gain trust and then be able to educate. So one of the other things that I wanted to do as I was developing those relationships was learn more, not just about that person, but about the areas that they were responsible for and what concerns did they have as far as the safety of their staff and themselves, and what are the things that they thought were most important, and how could I help with those things, either driving initiatives or training or technology or the ideas that I had. So internally, that's where I spent probably the vast majority of the first 90 to 100 days, was really concentrating on building those strong relationships internally and drumming up support and identifying the issues that were not just most prevalent, but weighed on the people's minds the most. Particularly because one of the reasons why I was brought in initially as a consultant was because they had identified safety and security as a concern in their latest employee survey. So the employees were saying that, asking about that, and that was certainly something that was very important. And I think along the way, building those relationships, and whether it was within the confines of meetings and committees, or if it was the other thing that I always like to do is once a week, ask somebody to lunch, just to have lunch, just to talk. And maybe it wasn't always just talking about business related things or security related things. It was getting to know them as a person too, and who they were and their family and so forth, because I think that connection is very important when you're talking about change management and changing culture. And that certainly goes back to that trust factor. And if somebody trusts you or considers you a friend, they're more likely to help you, support you, follow you, believe you, all those different things. So extremely important. And then just as important on the external side. So because of all my experience in the past, I knew one of the things I wanted to do immediately upon coming into town was to start developing a relationship with local law enforcement, local fire. And it just so happened that here, those two things reside with one person under one roof. So setting up kind of meet and greet meetings, and it was just more or less cold calling, me reaching out, introducing myself, and just asking, telling them that I'd love to sit down and talk more about them and Memorial and what they know and how I might be able to help and how they might be able to help me. And I have to say, I really never, whether it was here or anywhere else I've been, I really haven't had a whole lot of negative response to that. Typically people, it might take a little longer for someone to warm up to you, but they're always willing to sit down and have a cup of coffee with you or meet you and learn more about you. And as you probably know, it's extremely hard sometimes to develop that trusting relationship, particularly with either local law enforcement or state law enforcement, where, sometimes they can have a negative perception of what security is and what security means. And the fact that it was a new program here, I'm sure there were some questions and concerns, but I was lucky enough to have a background and then be able to go out and walk the walk and prove myself along the way, and have developed some great relationships. That relationship with the local law enforcement fire has led into being invited to sit on their community leadership meetings as far as police and fire. And then has also led to being invited into training consortiums to be a member. And the one that we're currently a member of, we're the only non-traditional law enforcement entity that's a member of this training consortium. So that also makes you feel good and says a lot too.
Absolutely. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the security program as well that you inherited. I'm sure, regardless, I know you were starting it from the ground up, but I'm sure because the hospital was already in existence, whether it was formal or informal, someone had to be responsible for security. So I'm just curious, when you first came in, what was the state of the security program?
Yeah, so there wasn't obviously no formal department or program in place, but the security piece was under the facilities group, the day shift. If they needed to have somebody do some patient monitoring in the ER, for example, it would be a facilities person. So you're taking away a skilled maintenance person and putting them down to watch, with no training, little to no training, to watch these individuals. So that's how they operated. And then on the overnights and the weekends, they would have one individual, for lack of a better term, a guard, that would be under the facilities group that would come in and would do the lockups at night and the unlocks in the morning, conduct any patient monitoring that needed to be done. And then when they weren't in the ER for patient monitoring or weren't doing their lockups or unlocks, they'd go around and they'd do light maintenance related activities such as change light bulbs and ceiling tiles and plunge toilets and do minor repairs and shovel snow and all that good stuff. Certainly unlike my past stops, it was certainly coming in and starting something brand new. No uniforms, no equipment, no training, no vetting of any kind. So we really started from scratch. All of those individuals that were working under the facilities group were given the opportunity to apply and move forward. We started with 5 uniformed officers and myself, May 5th, 2014. And that has since now grown to, we have myself as the director. We have a project manager administrator, the manager of public safety, 15 uniformed officers, 6 public safety associates who now during COVID are primarily assigned to entrance screening duties. I have 5 couriers, and before COVID, we had approximately 12 volunteers that helped us do a variety of different things, from assisting with wayfinding to being able to have our office doors open to answer phones and do some of the lower level things, check parking permits and so forth.
Excellent. Now, the one thing that you mentioned were the facility staff. And I'm just curious, since the offer was extended, did any of the facility staff decide to stay with the security department once things were more formalized?
Yeah, none of the skilled facilities guys moved on, but there were 4 individuals that were doing the guard work, and the semi-skilled, the changing light bulbs on the overnights and weekends. So all 4 of those individuals did start on May 5th with us. None of those individuals are currently still with us, and obviously over the course of time we've certainly evolved quite a bit, and our recruiting process has evolved as well.
Excellent. And that's a great segue, because that's the next piece I wanted to ask you about was that recruiting process. So what does the recruiting process look like, and how has it evolved since the foundation of the program?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially with something brand new. The other thing, as I don't think I've talked too much about it, but just to give you an idea, is it's not like Memorial Healthcare is the size of U of Health or some of our bigger cities. We're a relatively small community, roughly about 16 to 18,000 people. We have a rather large footprint as far as scope of work we do, because we do healthcare and provide healthcare services over 3 or 4 different counties right now. But we have our main hospital, our main facility, sits on 12.5 acres. We have a 160 bed hospital with 18 bed behavioral health unit. Our emergency department sees roughly around 30 to 35,000 individuals annually. It's not a terribly large organization right now, but so I think that's what is even more when it comes to recruiting. And we're about, I don't know Brian, how much familiar you are, but some of the listeners may be familiar with Michigan. So Owasso sits about 20 to 25 miles west of Flint, Michigan, and probably about 30 to 35 miles northwest or northeast of Lansing, Michigan, which is the capital. And so we're out in a rural area. And when we talk about recruiting, when I was first starting the program, you didn't have a whole lot of options, and you weren't going to get too many people that were going to drive from Flint or Saginaw or Lansing to work right away. With the individuals that we already had here started, I did reach out to a few of the people that I knew that I worked with at Emergent, and actually got 3 of those individuals to come over and work for us. And so that helped tremendously. And then beyond that, it was finding young, local, typically males, that were looking to use this as a stepping stone into law enforcement. And so that was our first initial phased approach, was just trying to find the best we could to put together the program that I wanted to put together. And we went through that phase, and then slowly shifted to now a more career-oriented staff. And how that's come about as we've had people come and go and have gone through this next phase, we were really able to bring on, I'd say we've probably brought on 4 or 5 individuals from inside the hospital itself. So they were working in other departments. And as we got up and rolling and going, and they saw what we were doing and how we were doing it, and the training and development and the growth opportunities and the culture, the departmental culture we were creating, they really wanted to come aboard the team. And so we were able to get some really quality people who were looking at this more as another opportunity for a career, not necessarily with an interest in going and moving on strictly to law enforcement. They had an interest, they came on, and a number of them are still with us. And so that's gone on. And now that we've really been around for now 7 years, it'll be 7 years in May, established a reputation, have received a lot of success and recognition. We're starting to get other individuals. So when we have an opening, we get individuals that work at those bigger health systems in Flint and Lansing and Saginaw and even down by Detroit, who want to come up and give us a try. So as we've been able to establish a better recruiting method, and we've also along the way established an initial career ladder for officers. So we have 3 different phases of officers that you can continue to grow and build yourself if you want to. Within our program, we're looking to add another 3 layers to that sometime this year or early next year. And then as we've continued to develop all of those things, and again, been very successful at doing what we're doing, we've been able to increase pay. And obviously with increased pay, we've been able to increase the talent we can find as well.
Excellent stuff. Now, the next thing I want to touch on is the training piece, because that's obviously another very important element of a security program. So what was your approach to training?
Yeah, that's a big one, because I'm a huge proponent of developing a comprehensive training program, because both initial and ongoing training is just absolutely critical. A comprehensive training program is definitely a value add if you do it the right way and communicate it and educate in the right way. Reducing liability and exposure for the organization, providing a foundation for the officers for their continued growth and development, for confidence, professionalism, engaged officers that are really passionate about what they do. This really positions us to do the type of work we want to continue to do. We've put together a couple different phases. So the first phase of the training, the concentration was the recruiting piece and the training piece. So finding the right people and then training them on professionalism and patrol techniques and customer service and just general observation and de-escalation. And probably the biggest focus was report writing. So that was the real phase 1 initial concentration, which then as we grew, we decided, because when I first came on for the first, probably almost 3 years, we were officers, unarmed officers. So we had uniformed officers, but they were not armed, didn't carry any additional credentials and so forth. So some of the things we've added to go into that next phase was the IAHSS basic and advanced certification. So we've made that part of our process. So any brand new officer coming on, part of that first 90 days is going through the modules and completing that certification. And they need to complete that certification to move from a public safety officer 1 to a public safety officer 2. And then the other component was, now that we were going to arm our officers, we had to really develop a comprehensive firearms training program but then also add to that another couple components. And one of those was to our vetting, psychological evaluation by a trained professional. So that's done for all of our officers now coming in the door. But then phase two, defensive tactics, along with the firearms, use of force, situational awareness. And we also deployed SIRA, Suspicious Indicators Recognition Assessment, which is a training developed by Michael Rosen, who is a security professional consultant out there, works with a variety of different groups and entities, and I think first brought this to bear when he was with the Mall of America in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We started the SIRA program and rolled that out. I actually was able to gain a grant to bring that program on and bring Michael here to train. And so as part of that, this kind of goes back a little bit to that networking and relationship building. So one of the things I did when I was able to get that grant was we didn't have, at that point in time, enough individuals to fill the room for a class. So I reached out to Maryland at the University of Michigan and Sparrow Hospital in Lansing, Michigan, and a couple other entities to ask if they'd be interested in sending staff. So they actually sent staff to this training. And we've continued with that SIRA training, which really gives you the higher sense or provides these officers with a greater sense of situational awareness and observational skills. And then the ability to interview individuals without it appearing like they're sitting there interviewing an individual. And then concepts for how to follow up on those things. So that's been very critical. And then moving into phase three for us was taking on police authority. So here in the state of Michigan, we are one of 15 entities, last I knew, that are licensed and credentialed private security police agencies. Our public safety police authority officers have police powers, arrest powers, misdemeanor arrest powers in uniform on our property. And that phase three included preparing to go to the academy, and then the academy is the last piece to that. That's also where the IHSS advanced certification comes into play too, because all the officers, before they can qualify or be eligible to go to the police academy, must obtain that advanced level certification to show that they are passionate about what they do, and they're in it for the long haul and have a good sense of not just the security realm, but the healthcare security realm too. And the training piece is something we continue to look at further developing and adding to as we move forward. The next phases are going to include some of the advanced SIRA, obtaining instructorships at some level. So whether it's becoming a SIRA instructor or a CEPTED practitioner, or get into the tactical side with defensive tactics and firearms and so forth. We're looking forward to probably within the next year or so adding that phase 4 piece in for our staff.
Excellent. Now, I'm just curious, because you and your team have been able to accomplish so much in a pretty limited time. What's something that you're most proud of during your time at Memorial Healthcare?
Yeah, and that's probably a really tough question for a couple reasons. Number one, I unfortunately have to make myself as a leader very conscious of making sure we celebrate all of our successes, because sometimes I just get too involved in, great, we accomplished that, now what's next? We're heading on to the next thing. And yeah, it's really important to look back sometimes and know how far we've come, particularly for the size of our hospital and the location of our hospital. I think kudos goes to our CEO, Brian Long, as well as our board of directors here, because they have really fully supported this program and wanted to take it to a gold standard, not just go through the motions or check boxes. They really wanted to put something in place that means something. Really, I'm proud of the overall program. I'm proud of all the officers, my entire team, because without them, I wouldn't have seen the successes that I have seen either for our department or for me individually. I think one of the other things, the other pieces that I probably haven't alluded to, was our active assailant program and training that we put together. So that was one piece initially. that I was asked was one of the priorities of the board and Brian Long was to come up with, a response to this active shooter, active assailant issue that everybody was hearing about, and they wanted us to be on the forefront and covered. So whether that was developing the policies and procedures that went behind that, the training of the officers, but we also completed training of our entire hospital staff. So 1,500 members, including physicians, went through this initial active assailant training, which was critical. We've done a number of exercises. So I'm really proud of that. I'm proud of all of the projects and technology that we've put in place and the number of projects that we've completed in a short period of time. But that investment, again, goes kudos to our board for approving that and Brian Long for helping drive that, because they've invested a lot in this program. I can just give you a little bit of some insight when we talk about our video management system and cameras. When I first came here, they had 9 analog cameras that were very poor quality, weren't being monitored, watched, reviewed, nothing. We've since now, I think at last count, we were up in the neighborhood of closing in on 300 cameras. And we have a new neurology and wellness center, another 189,000 square foot building that's being built right now on campus that's going to double that by early next year. But probably the most proud, or the thing that I'm most proud of, is our annual employee engagement. Every year, Memorial Healthcare does an employee engagement survey, and I believe it's odd years they do an internal survey, and on even years they have a third party come in and do a survey. So we've done a survey every year since 2014. And when I came in 2014 for that first survey, we were the worst in the organization. We were last. And from 2014 to 2015, we went from worst to first. And we've been able to continue that first place position for the last 5 years. And I think that speaks volumes to the program, our department, the culture, which all goes right back to those people, the people that are involved. And again, my team, I can't say enough about my entire team, from our Renee Walters, our project manager and administrator, to all of our uniformed officers, particularly those senior officers that have been with me for 4 or 5 years. They've just been fantastic, and I think don't get enough credit sometimes for the successes that we've realized.
Absolutely. And I think the one thing that you left out there was leadership. And I just want to make sure that you take the time to recognize your part in that as well, because obviously it comes down to the team with you there guiding the ship. I think that's an important piece as well. And that being said, I'm just curious, what is your approach to leadership and shaping a culture?
I've really gotten into this, how becoming a better leader. One of the things over the last, my graduate degree, the concentration is executive leadership. And so that's how I got involved back in, I started that in 2014, 2015. And so I've really become a student, or tried to become a student of leadership and being a better leader. And I think the first thing I always ask myself when I'm approaching a problem or an issue or wanting to roll something out is reminding myself to be the leader that I wish I had, to really concentrate on that. And while I try to mesh servant leadership with extreme ownership, in reality, for me, the best approach is you have to be a chameleon of sorts when it comes to leadership, and you have to have the ability and enough emotional intelligence to know how to switch back and forth between the different styles as the situation or the individual that you're working with, whatever that dictates for you. Sometimes you got to be the leader that the situation calls for. Sometimes you need to be the type of leader that person needs right then and there. And that really means being flexible and being able to bounce back and forth between the different leadership styles. And I know early on, I thought very differently of leadership. And just because of the way I came up as a young person, into adulthood, and then in my first several professional jobs that weren't in the security world. And then when I first got in the security world, it was very different, where it was more of a do as I say, not as I do sometimes. It was more of a do it because I told you. And my focus is really trying to be building trust through transparency and relationships. So being very transparent in my actions and communicating the why we need to go in this direction, or why we need to institute this program, or why I need somebody to do this thing. Concentrating on the why, and making sure that those who work for me and report to me understand the why and understand their part in it, understand what the expectations are. So very clear expectations and understanding. I think a lot of that has to do with really growing your active listening skills. There's all kinds of different listening, but you really need to listen to understand instead of listening to respond, or listening with trying to pose your answer back, those kind of things. So really listening to what's being asked, listening to the feedback, accepting feedback, and then once you build that trust through transparency and relationships, I really I want to inspire and influence other employees and staff members to do better, and do better not just for the team, but also do better for themselves. And I go back to, we've brought in a number of different individuals from other departments within Memorial Healthcare. And one of the ones I didn't talk about, the offshoot, not so much the officer realm, but those public safety associates that do a lot of different things. But right now we're concentrating on the entrance screening. Is a lot of those came over from housekeeping. And it's really good to see when you can see an individual. And I just had this conversation this morning with one particular individual I had in mind. And she came and she didn't have a lot of confidence, but was very passionate about wanting to be of service. And she has grown so much. And so when you're able to see those staff members and officers grow under your leadership, that certainly makes me feel good. And that's really what it's all about, because at this point in my career, I just want to become the best leader I can be and continue to get better every day. But now I want to be able to lead and coach and teach others. And so we talk a lot internally in the department about teaching others to fish. So one example is anytime an officer comes and asks either myself or a supervisor a question, don't just give them the answer. Ask them, if you weren't able to get a hold of me right here today, or if I wasn't available right now, what would you do? And I think that's a great teaching moment, to where you can take them through that situation and process, instead of just giving them the easy answer, because then they're just going to keep coming back to you for the easy answer. Instead of trying to think on their own, creating this extreme ownership in them, so they take ownership of their piece of the pie and their ownership as part of the team. And when you do that, you see these individuals wanting to get better too. And so really that's what I'm looking at is what can I do to bring on the next generation of leaders that are going to take over for me at some point in time in the future. And I want to prepare them as well as I possibly can, and hopefully prepare them better than I was prepared. And so that's really my approach, or how I look at leadership in general.
Excellent. Now, I want to get your advice for somebody who's either they're new to healthcare, or they are building their own program. What's the first piece of advice that you would offer to an individual in that boat?
Gosh, I would say probably the number one thing would be is if they haven't already, to get involved in doing the extra things, and really being conscious about watching the leaders that they're either working with or around. And then also, I know here that one of the big things is continuing your education. So whether that's somebody that doesn't have or never started that, or didn't really go on to do anything past high school, or you got your associates, or maybe you got your bachelor's degree, I'm always trying to push my staff to go to the next level, particularly because the organization offers tuition reimbursement. And the other piece that I didn't talk about that we started to do last year was our first year. And I'm actually taking and picking a book on leadership of some kind. And we're taking 12 months to go through that book and having monthly meetings, lunch meetings, to where we can sit down, have lunch, and talk about what did we read last month, what's it mean to you, and how can we apply that to where you're at, the job you're doing, and how can we make our department better. And because I have to confess that through high school wasn't necessarily my thing. And while I did okay, I certainly probably didn't apply myself like I could have. And I can't say that I even read a book at all. I just did enough to get by through high school. And it wasn't really until I was serious and went to college for the first time that I really started to take learning seriously. And so I know that's something that came to me a little later. And so it's something that I try to push down to both my own children, but certainly my staff members. For somebody new get involved in here, the other thing is to make connections. We didn't have LinkedIn 10, 15 years ago. That is a real great component to start. To get involved in AS-IS or IAHSS, to get involved into a professional organization to where you're not only going to have access to those individuals for networking and to call upon and to ask questions of, but just the tremendous experience in learning and opportunities for formal learning is just, I can't count that enough. That is extremely important and something that I got into a little later and that I would want to relay to particularly those that are just starting out their careers or just getting into security or healthcare security, is try to learn and absorb as much as you possibly can and do it in a variety of different ways, because there are so many ways now to do it.
Awesome. No, it's definitely some very sound advice. Now, we've covered a number of different topics and we've gotten some really good information here. Is there anything that I haven't asked you yet that you would like to discuss?
No, I don't think so. I think we've covered a pretty good gamut of things.
Excellent. Now, as we're wrapping up, do you have a special message you'd like to share with the Healthcare Security Cast community?
I think the only thing that I would end with is just to, as we move into the future, always be open-minded, seek out the new innovation and new technology that's out there. But probably over the course of the last several months, I know it's been really tough, particularly in healthcare with the COVID pandemic. And I think there's a lot of us that have been on a roller coaster, highs and lows, and experiencing that over the last couple of several months, that we really need to remind ourselves to take a break, to take some time for ourselves, to recharge and make sure that we continue to keep our own health and wellness in mind as we move through the next several months too. I'm hoping we can see the light at the end of the tunnel now, and we don't necessarily know what that looks like or means or when that's actually going to happen, but I think we're on the other side of it, and I'm hoping that we can get back to some semblance of normal sometime soon.
Excellent. And as we close, what's the best way to connect with you?
Probably the easiest is I am on LinkedIn, and I am a pretty regular participant. I look and track that pretty closely. But my email address is Hauk at memorialhealthcare.org, or my direct phone line is 989-729-4885. And I'm always willing to talk, discuss, help anybody out that I possibly can, because I know that's the nature of security, but particularly in healthcare security, I think we have a really good group of professionals that we can always reach out to one another when we're up against the wall or experience an issue or just want to bounce something off somebody. So,
excellent. Thank you very much for your time today, Jeff. I appreciate it, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
Brian, it was an absolute pleasure, and I'm glad we were finally able to connect, and I really enjoyed our conversation today.
And this concludes another episode of the Healthcare Security Cast. The Healthcare Security Cast is available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music and Audible, and many other platforms as well. Check out our Linktree on your computer or mobile device. And this can be found at linktree/Brian Hamilton. That's linktr.ee/Brian, BRINE, Hamilton. Again, that's linktr.ee/Brian Hamilton. Or if it's easier, send me a text at 647-372-2042. That's 647-372-2042. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have or share any links you may be looking for. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, take care and stay safe.